Hello everyone, I'm Ronan Daniel, and this is part 2 of my series on narrative design. Last time I talked about two methods of creating a game and its narrative, and in this video I'll be taking a look at visual storytelling. So let's start with a brief overview of what visual storytelling is, and how it applies to games. Well, visual storytelling is exactly what it sounds like. It is telling a story through pure visuals, excluding things like music, voices, or text. Games have a few tools at their disposal to narrate their story to the player without needing to mutter a single word. It all has to do with the composition of the screen. Of course, that is what's being viewed by the player. It's a combination of the camera angle, the characters, and where they are relative to everything else, the environment, and the user interface, or UI. Let's start with the camera. Games can be equipped with many types of cameras: 2D, 3D, first person, third person, top-down, side-scrolling, static, etc. Cameras are usually chosen to allow the player access to certain gameplay information, but it can be used to narrate as well, just like in film. There are many types of camera shots that change the relationship of subject, usually a character, to the environment. In the most general sense, they vary from very far and wide shots that show a large part of the environment and just enough of the character to see their context within that environment, and very close-up shots that show only the character's face and facial expressions. Wide shots are great to show the context of the situation, to show the setting the character is in and maybe what their objective/reason for being there is, which is why wide shots are usually used in the beginning of a scene or game to establish the setting context for the player before the camera switches to a narrower perspective. Close shots are used to emphasize the character's importance as well as their facial expressions. It gives the viewer more of a connection with the character. It's also important to mention the general size and position of a subject in the frame is telling of that subject's importance and power. How many times have you seen a shot where the camera zooms right into a character's face, right before they unleash a powerful attack that ends a major fight? The reason is to visually show you how much power that character wields in that moment. Likewise, if the character is small and far from the camera in the frame, it makes them seem vulnerable and weak. Vertical displacement between two subjects can also emphasize the power difference between the two. Having a subject placed literally below another can figuratively tell the viewer that they are dominant of the subject below. The amount of movement in the frame can also dictate the mood of the situation. Lots of movement, especially dramatic or spontaneous ones, drive action. It makes the situation feel bright and energetic, sometimes tense and frightful. It demands our full attention to what's currently happening and helps the player feel in the moment. On the flip side, minimal or zero movement can make the situation feel calm, even sad or depressing. Without too much movement, it allows the player's attention to drift, to be commanded by more dominant things like color and music. It encourages the player to ruminate, and is why many dramatically static scenes are sad. Colors also play a large role in the mood of the game. Each color carries certain meanings and associations that the player automatically takes in without needing to think about it. Let's go briefly over some examples. In games, red is most often used as a symbol of danger, warning the player of something threatening ahead, like in shooter games when a red overlay appears when you're on low health. Sometimes it's used in the positive context of passion or excitement, like in Persona 5's color scheme. The red complements the themes of rebellion and chaos. It also is commonly used in lighting or in the environment to give the sense of immense heat. Areas like that are simultaneously dangerous. Orange is both literally and figuratively a mix of red and yellow. It's also associated with warmth, although less intense, even a sort of serene kind of warmth. And it's also associated with energy and creativity. Orange is also used in lighting to mimic the light of sunset, which in our world represents the end of the day, but in games it can often mean the end of a long trial or journey, often a good ending. It can also be associated with changing seasons, like fall colors, leaves, and so also associated with major change in the narrative. Yellow is a bright color associated with sunlight and bright emotions, like joy and happiness. It contributes to Persona 4's bright and joyful feel, as it's the game's theme. It's also used as a warning symbol in the environment or the UI, akin to a traffic light. And speaking of traffic lights, the color green is most often used as a go indicator, a positive sign. It's also associated with nature and freedom, which is often why you'd first see green foliage after escaping some kind of trap. Blue is most often associated with calmness and gentleness. After all, it is the darkest hue. It isn't as bold and intense on the eye compared to brighter, warm colors. It can also be associated with blue morning twilight, which is a quiet and cool time of day. It's also associated with sadness, which can help a scene feel calmer but also heavy with emotion. It can also be used in character design to show a character is calm and collected, sometimes even intelligent. Purple is often associated with luxury or royalty and even magic. Cooler and lighter tones of purple, like lavender, can also be associated with serenity and grace. It can be used in designs to show status or classically in magic effects to emphasize its mysticality. Of course, those are all hues, but tone and saturation play a role in how those hues present themselves. Generally, darker tones accentuate negative associations, and lighter tones accentuate positive associations. Saturation is directly linked with the intensity of the color, both literally and figuratively, where you can really get bold, hard-hitting colors with lots of saturation, and more subtle, mellow colors with less. It's also important to mention that color meanings differ in different parts of the world, so remember to do some research into your demographic to help you figure out which colors you should use. Alright, now that we looked at some methods of visual storytelling, let's look at some games and analyze the way they utilize visual storytelling. The first thing you see when opening Portal is you waking up from a bed. You are in an enclosed glass box. The only things around you are a toilet, a small table with your favorite radio, a coffee cup, and some bad reading material. This setup tells you that you live here, but it's also drawing reference to a prison cell, despite being in a sci-fi style. Outside your cell, you see a larger room. You are in the center of it, the focus piece. You also see a camera and a blurred window above. This tells you that you're being watched. The window being situated higher also gives a sense of authority. Whoever is watching you is dominant. And the glass is only clear one way, which leads to a feeling of helplessness. The colors are all cold and gray, plain, like you'd expect out of a science lab, cold, heartless, and indifferent to your suffering. On top of this, when you go through the portal, you see the area beneath your cell, a red, seemingly infernal hell, hidden beneath everything you see, giving you the sense of danger. The first few simple tests are painfully empty rooms with your objective in plain sight. This serves the gameplay purpose of teaching players about the mechanics, but also serves to heighten the helplessness of the player and raise the power/authority of the tester, giving the player nothing at their disposal to rebel and forcing them to comply with the tests. It's only after some progression do you start seeing little peeks of what lies outside the test chamber walls. Everything is much different, mechanical, and you see warning messages left for you. This slowly raises the power the player gains over the tester. Only during the climactic moment where your fated demise encroaches do you get an opportunity to rebel. During this last chapter, you explore, in the words of the devs, the guts of the enrichment center. The visuals of the building are completely different, much more open and suited with unnecessary props. This gives the feeling of life. There's people that would actually work here. No longer are you trapped, you are now in this position of power, and you can begin working toward freedom. Also note how everything is colored orange, and how you're able to view the test chambers from above. It's all to give the player a sense of hope and power over this situation. That's all for this video. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.